Hey everyone, it's Hailey, and today I'm going to be talking about your least favorite books of all time. So recently I did a video talking about your favorite books of all time, and I mentioned that this video was incoming, so here it is. So today I am going to be going through that survey again. If you guys don't know, I did this little survey. I did one first at Bookmas, and then I thought it would be a really fun idea to do it just for all-time favorites and least favorites. So I asked you guys for your least favorite and favorite book and your why. That's kind of the difference where I improved upon the Bookmas one, because I thought it would be fun to like have commentary, but I was just kind of like, oh, a lot of people didn't like this book, but I have no idea why. But now I have some insight. So this is kind of similar to Bookmas actually, because when I did that, I had so many more responses for favorite books than I did for least favorite. And this is the same. And also, a lot of people didn't have a least favorite book. And I'm sorry if my eyes are watering. I've just been having a coughing fit because I ate a protein bar before doing this, and now it's right there. Anyways, a lot of you guys didn't have a least favorite book is what I was saying. And part of that is because like a lot of you guys said that you didn't DNF, so you don't finish books that you're not liking, which is a great practice anyways. So that also just left you with no least favorite book, but we do still have some great ones to talk about today. I think this was a really interesting list. So I just wanted to take a second to thank the sponsor for today's video, Scentbird. Scentbird is a really cool service because it is actually a perfume subscription service. So I have a really hard time choosing a scent, and it's really nice to have these small little travel size scents that I can test out and see what I actually like before committing to buying a full-size bottle. And it's also super affordable. Like I said, it is a subscription service, so you get to choose a new designer fragrance to try out every month. So it's really cool to try something new all the time. It's also very flexible. You can skip any month that you want without any penalties. The samples that they give you are also 8 times bigger than regular perfume vial samples. Scentbird gives you a 30-day supply of each fragrance, so you get a really good amount to actually try it out and see if you like it. And honestly, as someone who likes to switch up my fragrance a lot, like these sizes are perfect for me. They come in these nice little velvet like carrying cases, and then they are also in this little case. Then you just twist it up and then you can spray it here, but you can take it out and there's the actual scent that you have. I have 4 scents here. So I have Memoir Archives, and this is Destination Unknown, and it has notes of California Poppy, Agave Nectar, and Desert Marigold. Let's Be Real from Confessions of a Rebel, and this one has notes of Jasmine, Tuberose, Tonka Bean, Vanilla, and Cashmere Woods. I also have Michael Kors Wonderlust, and this has notes of almond milk, sandalwood, bergamot, pink pepper, jasmine, sambac. And finally, from Catherine Maladrino, I have Dream, and this one has notes of apple, rhubarb, muguet, peony, and sheer musk. So I do tend to kind of go for more like sweet scents, I feel like, but I did kind of try some different things this time, and I really love all of them. They're especially perfect for summer. I love changing my scent with the season, and now, you know, I just want to smell like a summer dream. I definitely recommend that you guys check out Scentbird. It is such an awesome service, and they have been kind enough to give you guys a little offer here. So make sure to click the link in my description box down below and use my code, which I will have on the screen, but that will give you 55% off of your first month at Scentbird, which ends up being about only $7 a month. Super exciting. As I am in Canada, Scentbird is now also available in Canada, so definitely check it out. I really love it and highly recommend it. And thank you so much to Scentbird for sponsoring today's video. So similarly to the last video, I'm going to be counting down to like the #1 most hated book. And don't feel bad if a book that you love is on here. It doesn't mean it's a bad book. Like multiple books that I've loved came up here quite a bit, but it's just everyone has different opinions. Everyone likes different things. No 2 people read the same book. It's bound to happen. Just like I don't want anyone to feel bad about a book that they love if it comes up on here. It's just, it is what it is. Also, just like the last video, if I'm like doing stuff over here, it's because I have my computer over here, so then I can actually look at the comments and stuff. But interestingly, the first book that I have to talk about today is one that showed up on the favorites list, and that is It Ends With Us Class by Colleen Hoover. Colleen Hoover books have always been pretty divisive, so it doesn't really surprise me that this one is on here. I personally did enjoy it, but there are definitely some people who didn't like it, and the reasonings that they give, it made them feel sad and frustrated, which is valid. Someone else says that it is poorly written and the plot was unbelievable. I don't think that it was poorly written. I do think that the writing has a lot of cliches, but that's kind of just what Colleen Hoover's writing is, and that's not necessarily always a bad thing, but her writing can read really corny, and sometimes that's what like doesn't really mesh with me with her stuff. And in particular, it was kind of weird with this particular story. People were also saying that the story was kind of boring, and I mean, there isn't really a lot going on. Next, 10 people said that Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is one of their least favorite books of all time. This list is kind of different than the other list, because the other list there weren't that many classics, there was just a couple, but on this list there are many classics, which is understandable because a lot of people have been like, they have to read classics, so then they don't end up liking them. Fahrenheit 451, I am actually really sad is on here because I really loved Fahrenheit 451 personally. I read it for school and I just loved it. But people are saying that they read it for class, they couldn't for the life of them stay entertained or even motivated to read it. A lot of people, this is one that they had to read for school, and that's why they didn't like it. They found the story boring is definitely the main thing that is coming up in a lot of these comments. I don't know, I didn't find the story boring. I thought it was really fascinating, but maybe I would have different feelings if I reread it, but I'm still standing my ground on the fact that I really loved it like until that day comes when I reread it, which probably won't happen, to be honest, so I'm just gonna stick with my original opinion. Next is 50 Shades of Grey by E.L. James. Of course, 50 Shades is on here, that doesn't really surprise me. So the general commentary is that the writing is not great and that it's overhyped for no reason at all, and it's a really toxic story, which isn't incorrect. I think something being boring is kind of like the main thing that's going to come up here a lot, and this is definitely one that is getting the boring commentary as well. And someone also said that it's just bad fan fiction of Twilight with lots of smut, and they don't hate smut, it's just not very good. Next is Looking for Alaska by John Green. John Green books have always been pretty divisive once again, but I personally really love him. I love his books, and I did really enjoy Looking for Alaska. I read it actually at the same time that I read Fahrenheit 451. I did a book like report project thing on both of them at the same time, even though I think I was only supposed to read one, but I just decided to read both of them because at that point I had liked reading, even though before that I didn't. But Looking for Alaska is one, like, a lot of people don't really mesh with John Green's writing. So the commentary is that it's overly pretentious, cringeworthy, all of those things. And his writing, like, that's just, they are pretentious characters. I'm not gonna deny that. Once again, we have boring and kind of an interesting comment, which I don't think is entirely wrong or invalid. Is that a word? I know invalid, but like invalid, is that a word? I don't know. But this person says that it was boring and it felt like it was trying to be impactful without making an impact for them personally. You can definitely tell that it's a book that's trying. And another person said that they're not a reader who DNFs books easily, but this was their first conscious DNF as they just couldn't get into it at all. I actually missed a book. I'm sorry. I should have ordered these before I started doing the video, but The Silent Patient, I can't remember who it's by, but this one came up 8 times as well. So 8 people said that this was their least favorite book. And a lot of people are saying that it was very confusing. It felt like a movie. So they've seen this plot unfold a plethora of times and they saw everything coming. Boring once again, and people just couldn't really get interested in the story. And I guess it's a thriller. I didn't know that, but it was just a thriller that people saw the end coming. So that seems to be the main thing that they're obviously annoyed by. Next up is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, I believe is his name, but this came up with 11 people saying that it is their least favorite book, and I read this because someone had recommended it to me and I really didn't like it at all either, so I do understand that. But this is another book that is said to be very pretentious, also tedious and overhyped. It's a book that is said to be trying too hard and it's boring. A lot of people had to read this one for school as well. As this person says, it was boring and too cheesy. They're all for following your dreams, but the way that this one did it was so lame. It's also jam-packed full of Pinterest type quotes, and that's probably because like they originated in the book and then were taken to Pinterest, because I'm pretty sure this is kind of an older book. So that doesn't surprise me. It's kind of like that live, laugh, love thing. That's really what it makes me think of. 11 people also said that The Betrothed by Kiera Cass was their least favorite book of all time. And I also really didn't like The Betrothed, and I'm really sad about it because I had high hopes for it, but it was definitely really disappointing. There was nothing happening in this book, and that is what people are agreeing with. Nothing really happened, and then at the end a whole lot happens, which felt really weird, and they didn't feel connected with the characters, which 100% I agree with. It felt totally flat, insta-love, boring, no connection with the characters. Everything in the book was dull, things weren't developed, and yeah, that just seems to be the main thing. It kind of felt like it was just like rushed, like nothing happened and then so much happened, but none of it really made sense, and you didn't really have enough build up to actually care all that much about what was happening when it did happen. It was just such a strange reading experience, coming from reading The Selection, which I did really enjoy, and then going to this, which was kind of her first book that was more similar to The Selection. It was just a very no. 11 people also said that The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab was their least favorite book of all time. Once again, this one shows up on both lists. So this one showed up on my 2021 favorites of the year, like for the ones that you gave me. Basically, this video that I did for 2021, it showed up very high on the favorites, and then it also showed up as, I think, the #1 on the least favorites of the year. And this was on the favorites again, and once again, we're back to the least favorites. I haven't read this book yet, but it seems to be a really, really divisive one for sure. Like, people either love it or they hate it. Also, someone put a typo and they put The Invincible Life of Addie LaRue, and that makes me laugh. I'm really not surprised by the critiques of this being slow and boring. That's kind of what's put me off from reading it, because I have heard that it's quite slow and can be boring and takes a while to actually get going. And a lot of people have said that it's quite overhyped. So I think that's bound to happen whenever a book is so hyped up. You go into it with really high expectations, and then, you know, the higher you come from, the faster you fall. You know what I mean. It's that like quote. That's essentially what is happening. But someone said it was a waste of potential, and another person said that because they were so frustrated while reading it, they ended up hating it. It was such an interesting story and they were extremely excited for it, but the characters were insufferably boring. That is quite unfortunate. But also really interesting, because the main thing that people said they loved about it in the other video was that the characters, like, they really connected with them. So I don't know what to make of that. Next up is another really hyped up book, and that is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armez. I read this book and I also didn't really like it. I thought it was okay. Like, it just didn't blow me away. I didn't hate it. Definitely overwritten, and there were things that I didn't like about it, but it was just kind of meh for me. But the 11 of you that said it was your least favorite book, particularly I like this person's comment. Where was the flavor? Which is so true. Like, that was the thing. It was just kind of meh. So once again, we've got boring. It really was boring. It was boring, then it got to meh, is what this other person says. And the many times we were told about Aaron and Blue Eyes and how big he was. Also the many Twilight references. So they just found the whole thing to be really overhyped. And that's fair. Another really great comment here. He's so tall, but this isn't real. He's godlike, but this is a deception. I'm so small, but I wish it was real. Rinse and repeat for 490 pages. You're not wrong. Like, you're really not wrong. So there's a lot of agreement that the book is kind of too long, didn't really live up to the hype, and that it's just kind of, it was predictable and ended up being boring in the end. Now we have another book that is a repeat offender, because it showed up on the favorites list, but 12 people also said that The Night Circus is their least favorite book of all time. I read The Night Circus, wanted to love it, and I didn't hate it. I wouldn't say it's one of my, like, hated books of all time, but I didn't really like it that much either. So the complaint is kind of where I fell out with the story as well, which is that it's very, very slow and boring and dull overall. I don't know if I would say it was dull. Well, I guess I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I don't know if I would agree with that is what I'm saying. I think it was whimsical and beautiful, but it definitely was quite slow for me, which made me quite bored. Quite a few people also didn't really enjoy the number of perspectives. They found that kind of hard to get into the story and made it too long. And this other person said, it was not at all what I expected. The contest was so vague and undefined, it was not much of a contest, which is kind of true. There was too much back and forth between all the timelines and characters, and they did not mesh with the lyrical writing style at all. Not for them. I agree, it wasn't for me, and I do think that I was kind of confused about like why it was so hyped up. Next is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which 12 people said is their least favorite book of all time. Interesting. I read this one and I enjoyed it. Wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it is one of the like hate to love romances that I enjoy more than others. It's not really my favorite trope, but this is one that I did like. However, that being said, 99% Mine by the same author, I actually really hated. I do have another book by that author that I haven't read yet, but I really hated 99% Mine. Someone is doing some construction stuff. I'm sorry if you can hear it, but it's so nice out. I have the windows open. Hopefully it's not too loud. I don't really know what's happening out there, but we will get through this. So a lot of people didn't like the characters and didn't like how there were a lot of plot holes and no definitive story behind it, and it was very cliche. They didn't think that the characters like actually hated each other, and it just became repetitive and boring and annoying characters. Actually, I'm just gonna read this person's comment. The way I wish I could purge this entire book out of my brain. I really found the entire love part of the story silly. I did not see the chemistry between the characters, both of which I disliked. And someone also said that this is the book that made them hate to love, which, yikes. And also with 12 people saying it was their least favorite is Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, I believe is the author. I know so many people who have said that they hated this book actually. This is another classic. I haven't read it. A lot of people read it for school and just absolutely hated it. And I don't know why it comes up so much. There was some, I can't remember if it was Hannah or Zoe in Bookmarked who also said that they hated this book. But so many people have said that it was required reading in high school and is the worst reading experience that they ever have had. Also, it is Joseph Conrad, but it's also apparently racist. So I'm not missing out on anything, but many people have said that it's racist, so definitely going to skip that one. Next up, 14 people said that The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald is their least favorite. Once again, a book that was definitely assigned for school a lot. I personally read it for school and I did actually quite enjoy it, but this is a very, very valid comment though. It talks about the American dream, but like how can it be the American dream if it's only rich white characters? It doesn't make any sense. And there are definitely many things to unpack there, and it's also very true and really, really an interesting point of view, because I mean, the American dream inherently, you know, but we're not gonna get into that. So many people just didn't like the characters. They found the story like pointless. There wasn't all that much happening in it, and all the characters were really selfish, and they fell asleep while reading it. Next, 15 people said that The Catcher in the Rye by, I almost said by Holden Caulfield, which is absolutely incorrect, by J.D. Salinger is their least favorite. I read Catcher in the Rye at the right time in my life because I actually really loved Catcher in the Rye. I totally see why people would hate this book. So many people said that Holden irritated them to no end. There's no actual plot line. Like, it's honestly Holden Caulfield is why so many people hate Catcher in the Rye. Literally the main thing is the main character's like behavior, the teen angst and everything. I read it when I was a teenager full of angst, so it completely appealed to me, but absolutely literally every single one of these is either complaining about the fact that there's no actual plot line or that Holden irritated them and they just hate the main character, which is kind of hilarious. It makes me laugh. Next up, 16 people said that The Cruel Prince by Holly Black was their least favorite book. And I read The Cruel Prince. It was super, super hyped up. So I think this kind of has fallen victim to being a little bit too hyped up, but I read it and I thought it was fine. I didn't love it as much as everyone else did, but I thought it was okay. I actually decided recently to unhaul the 2 sequels because I don't think I'm ever like actually realistically going to read them, but it was just fine. But a lot of people are saying that it is quite overhyped. They didn't like the characters. They didn't like the info dumps and descriptions that weren't needed. I mean, the main character is definitely one that was hated a lot. The plot was messy and the romance seemed completely forced. Definitely one that the characters are like very disliked, it seems like. Next up, 21 people said that Twilight by Stephanie Meyer is their least favorite. I read Twilight when I was like a teenager and I did really like it, but I haven't read it since, and I think it's just like fine now. I think if I reread it now, I probably wouldn't really like it. But this comment that someone put is, it gave me the ick. I just love that. So this person's comment is actually how I feel like I would feel. So I used to like it, but now I just can't stand the writing. I think that the writing is quite cliche, and I think I would have probably a really hard time with that now. But another person says that it sends a really bad message. The main character is weak and there's so much wrong with it. Someone else's comment is just, he watches her while she sleeps. Amazing. Someone else says they can't explain it. So essentially, like, the toxic relationships, it's really over dramatic and the writing doesn't mesh with a lot of people. Next is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I think this came out as a TV show or something recently, but I haven't read this book and I don't think I really will. It doesn't seem to interest me, and I mean, this isn't really making me want to read this book, but a lot of people have said that it was very boring. They hated the main characters, couldn't connect to the story, and didn't like the writing or anything, and they don't understand the hype of it. Apparently the characters are not just normal people, they're horrible people, according to all of you. I can't remember if I said it, but that was 23 people who said normal people. Next, we have a couple tied for 25. So 25 people said that After by Anna Todd was their least favorite. This one didn't surprise me at all. I have not read After, and I will not read After, but a lot of the complaints are obviously about like the toxicity of it. It definitely is like quite a not great story. Apart from the toxicity of the characters and the relationship, a lot of people also didn't really like the writing. Next is Harry Potter and the Cursed Child by not actually that person. It's by two other people, I don't remember, but this one I wanted to mention because it is also my least favorite book of all time. I don't think this thing should have ever happened, but 25 of you agreed with me. As someone said, it ruins the series, which I think is completely true. Unnecessary cringe, it didn't need to exist, all the characters were annoying, it just, yeah, it was, as this person says, the story was pure garbage, or as this other person says, I think it's self-explanatory, which is true. Like, you really don't even need to justify that one. Not that you need to justify anything, but you get what I mean. I was super surprised by this next one, but next is Lord of the Flies by William Golding, which had 28 people saying was their least favorite. I read Lord of the Flies, and like, maybe I just don't remember it, but I thought it was fine. Like, I don't know, I didn't love it, but I didn't really not like it either. The main things are that it's slow and boring, and I really enjoyed this comment because this is absolutely something that I would say. So in the survey, like, the question is, why didn't you like it? And this person, I just didn't. Many people had to read this for school and like analyze it, which made them really not like it. And I mean, to be fair, it is a pretty brutal story, so that is a lot of things that, like, that's a lot of the main critique of it, and fair. Very interestingly, the least favorite book that came up the most is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart, which had 34 people saying that it was their least favorite book. This is definitely one of those controversial books, and I think after it got hyped up on TikTok, it like really took off with how controversial it is. I read this book and I really loved it, to be honest, but so many people hated the writing style, they hated the trope that it goes on, and they found the characters to be really annoying, didn't like the ending and the twist to it, didn't like any of that. So yeah, I think that's really interesting because I actually really liked this book, but that just goes to show, you know, not everyone's gonna like what you like. But that is going to be all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another new one soon. Bye!